Walk with me through the halls of the Comic Kingdom. Heroineburgh. The fun part of doing videos, for me, is discovering new things and sharing them with my audience. It doesn't matter how big of a comics buff you are, there is always something out there that you haven't seen. One of the nicer surprises in recent years is Heroineburgh. It began as a series of independent live-action videos and branched into a comic book series. It's also the name of the studio/publisher. If you love superheroines and supervillainesses, Heroineburgh is the place to be. This is not a paid endorsement. Heroineburgh happened to come up on my radar and I wanted to tell you about it. What's Heroineburgh all about? If you're into superheroine characters like I am, you're in for a real treat. Although this franchise is set in present day, it has some 1980s stylings. After all, the creator grew up on comics from what is now referred to as the Bronze Age. Pittsburgh is the name of the city. Heroineburgh is its nickname, due to the fact that so many superpowered women live there. But how did this come to be? One night, a meteor exploded over the city. Its immense dark energy irradiated only women, but not all women. Instantly, you have a city with seemingly countless superpowered females. It would appear there was an intelligence to the energy that gave these women their powers. Was it selective? How come some, but not all women were affected? It would also seem that the powers given to these women play off their personality types. The bad thing is that not all of the women given superpowers are on the side of good. As a matter of fact, there are a fair share of women who use their new powers for evil purposes. The heroines ultimately form an alliance called the Pittsburgh Heroine League and are endorsed by the city's law enforcement. They fight back the forces of evil, collectively called the Black Faction. The Black Faction's main goal is to discredit the heroines and have them viewed by the world at large as vigilantes, allowing the evil society to run rampant. What to expect? Heroineburgh is an ensemble cast in the truest sense of the term. There is no actual main character. Some characters appear more than others. You'll often see multiple heroines and villainesses in a story. The creator says that maybe at some point in the future he'll focus on one character or a handful of them, but for now he wants to keep things as they are because all the characters are so much fun to write and showcase. The videos and comics are very much a product of the now time, but there are some sharp 1980s accents. The theme song for the videos is some very 1980s synthesized girl pop. The special effects, although they may seem crude by Hollywood standards today, would have wowed audiences back in the 1980s. Odd enough, it kind of works. The biggest thing that makes Heroineburgh feel nostalgic are the characters themselves. The costume designs are typically bright and colorful. Even the darker characters don't feel much more advanced than the early 1990s. In my book, these are positive qualities. By the mid-1990s, comic books went into dark and scary places. Heroineburgh is a new comic with an old-school touch. Some characters are going to grab you more than others. That's just the design of the series. Yet they all seem to belong in the same place. Who is this for? Although a lot of Heroineburgh smacks of the 1980s, especially the comic books, this is not like what you would have seen from DC or Marvel at the time. It's not for general audiences. It's a bit closer in style to the independent comics of that time, as it's looser with the language and a bit more suggestive. Real young kids can watch the videos and read the comics without getting warped, but seriously, I think you have to be 12 and up to appreciate Heroineburgh. Teenagers, college kids, and 30-somethings are really going to dig this. For one thing, there is some coarse language. Expect to hear F-bombs in the videos. The comics are quite a bit cleaner, with the B-word being about the worst thing you'll see. Some characters are lesbians, but there's nothing sexually explicit. This also doesn't have gory violence. It doesn't need gore because there is enough interesting action to make it worthwhile. Heroineburgh is certainly man stuff entertainment, but girls can like it too. There is quite a diversity in ethnic and social backgrounds. Some characters are a bit more street, and some are more uptown. These women work all kinds of different jobs, from DJs at a nightclub, to mechanical engineers, to vape store owners. Some of these characters have secret identities, and others let their real names be known to the public. How did it all start? The creator of this franchise prefers to remain low-key. For all intents and purposes, we'll just call him Mr. Creator. He is no Johnny-come-lately and has had extensive experience in journalism, creative writing, and songwriting. I asked Mr. Creator how his unique idea developed. In 2013 to 14, there was a local play in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania called Pittsburgh Batman. It featured the famous characters from Gotham City, but transplanted to Pittsburgh. It occurred to Mr. Creator that superhero sagas in Pittsburgh weren't that much of a thing in superhero media. Superhero stories are always set in other cities like New York or Los Angeles, or fictional places like Metropolis and Gotham City. But the big historic city of Pittsburgh was one of those places that got overlooked. Pittsburgh was an interesting choice for a setting and hadn't been done to death. Plus, it allowed Mr. Creator and his crew a chance to play off the famous city's landmarks in Yinzer culture. By the way, Yinzer is the term used to refer to a Pittsburgh native. In my opinion, Pittsburgh is as much of a character in the videos and comics as any of the heroines in Villainesses. Pittsburgh Batman was just the spark that started the flame of Heroineburgh. Mr. Creator was already into live-action superhero TV shows and web videos. He had been watching the Marvel and DC shows on the CW and Netflix. Other notable influences included AC Comics' FemForce videos, George Perez's Sisterhood of Superheroines, Logan Cross's Superheroine Legends, North Carolina's The Superfems, Super Knocked Up, Canada's Heroes of the North, among several others. But live-action superheroines were not Mr. Creator's only influences. He was an avid reader of comic books back in the 1980s. As a matter of fact, he had submitted characters to the popular Dial H for Hero series from DC Comics. Some of the characters in Heroineburgh derived directly from these attempts. He was also really into DC's New Teen Titans, Marvel titles like Dazzler, Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, and X-Men, as well as independent comics like DN Agents, Elementals, Love and Rockets, and Whisper. The most obvious inspiration for Heroineburgh, however, would be FemForce from AC Comics. As far as independent comics go, FemForce is almost popular enough to be considered mainstream, and it's certainly been long-running. It is important to state that Heroineburgh is not a clone of FemForce. The biggest similarity is that both titles consist primarily of good girls and bad girls, but both are still very different from each other in tone and storytelling. They seem to complement each other. Chances are, if you like one of these titles, you will like the other. Mr. Creator says that when he started the Heroineburgh video series in 2017, he did not originally intend for there to be a comic book. The idea for the comic book came to him during the filming of episode 7. One of the actors, Benjamin Zeus Barnett, was a budding comic book artist. He suggested to Mr. Creator that a Heroineburgh comic book series be made. More artists were added as the project developed. Mr. Creator is also a musician, and one of his friends in the music scene worked for DC Comics. His name was Jason Wright, and he became the cover artist for the series. I will tell you right here and now, the covers are absolutely fantastic. The artwork is great, and the women look so slick. Jason Wright's covers are definitely going to be the attention getters when you come across these comics. Heroineburgh Comics is very true to its Pittsburgh roots. As of 2023, every artist who has worked on it has been a Pittsburgh native, including legends in the business like Don Simpson and Howard Bender. The first issue of Heroineburgh Comics, from the Heroineburgh publisher, was released in 2019. It's not published on a regular monthly basis. If the readership continues to rise, issues may be released more frequently. If you like this series, support it. Let them know what you think. Issue number 2 was released in 2020. Issue number 3 was released in 2022. Issue number 4 is coming out in late 2023. The first issue is great, but the comics get better with every issue. The Comics Review. One thing I want to make clear to everyone watching this video is that the Heroineburgh comics are very well made and worth buying. The covers and pages are printed on a nice glossy stock. There's no cheap pulp to be found. These issues will look good forever. It's a standard size comic, not one of those mini comic jobs. It's 16 pages, but here's the real kick. It's all comics, no ads. A real plus for me, and for you too, is that the issues are in full color. Many independent comic publishers over the years have printed comics in black and white. I've read a lot of good black and white comic books over the years, but color is always better. I like how this comic is colored. It's like watercolors. Still very colorful, but not too bold, and real easy to look at. The interior art, largely done by Benjamin Zeus Barnett, is not like the cover art. I like it because it has that 1980s era independent comic style. It's a bit looser, which is what makes Heroineburgh fun in the first place. Nothing about Heroineburgh is trying to be like Marvel or DC, which is what makes it work. Unlike most superhero comics, this isn't one big ongoing story. Each issue has 2 standalone stories that are still connected to each other. One story doesn't contradict something in the other. You can start with any issue in the series and still get what's going on. That's a plus. Another neat thing about these comics is that each one comes with a sticker of the characters. This is a fun throwback to a time when comics came with awesome freebies. There are also pin-up pictures on the back cover. Of course, I could never cut up a comic to hang them on the wall, but the idea is cool. The most important thing worth mentioning about Heroineburgh is that it's a refreshing change of pace from the extremely serious and downright dreary superhero sagas of the last few decades. It's a bit more optimistic than most of the comics, movies, and television shows we've been seeing in recent years. These aren't downer adventures, just fun stories of good girls versus bad girls. Sometimes the bad girls get away, but good always prevails. Characters worth mentioning. Heroines. Arctica, real name Greta Bjorndottir. She is a cryogenics physics researcher. She also has the power of extreme cold temperatures. In the video series, it's explained that her costume is, in fact, a costume of the famous Emma Frost, aka White Queen character from Marvel Comics. Even at that, Arctica is brunette instead of blonde, and she's always been a heroine. Emma Frost was a villainess for many years in the comics before she reformed, and is still a bad girl in a lot of other media. I've always liked characters, good or bad, with cold power, so Arctica rates pretty high with me. Lunessa, real name Vanessa Luna. She has the ability to turn light beams into solid objects. Lunessa has one of the sexiest looks of all the heroines. Her purple and black costume is off the hook. I also like the fact that it's not just a costume she puts on, but the result of a magic transformation. Even her hairstyle and color has changed, making her completely unrecognizable from her civilian form. She also works as a masseuse and as a synth-pop DJ at a nightclub. Savannah, real name Anna Savage. You knew there had to be a cat girl somewhere in the series, didn't you? She has a sexy look with her leopard-spotted catsuit and black high-heeled boots. She's a veterinarian with all the cat-like powers you'd expect. Feline speed, strength, sharp senses, and of course, claws. The Catwomen of comics are always interesting, and Savannah is no exception. She also has a direct nemesis with her misfit sister named Stacy. The black sheep of the family, Stacy takes a drug that increases her size, strength, and gives her cat power similar to her hated sister. She's a rare character for this series because her powers don't directly come from the meteor explosion. Now going by the name of Panthira, she works as a criminal enforcer with two ambitions. One, to be a boss, and two, to destroy Savannah. Savannah has a lot of story possibilities. In issue number 2, she fights and loses against her hateful sister. In issue number 3, they're both knocked out and taken prisoner by the evil Clarina. The mad genius wants to steal the Catwomen's genetic material to make her own clones. Fortunately, other heroines come to their rescue, but Panthira escapes, swearing revenge for another day. I'd like to see where this saga goes. Savannah has an enemy that's stronger than her, and they both have a common enemy. If Panthira ever becomes a top-ranking criminal, Savannah will really have a challenge on her hands. Spectrina, real name Katrina Spector. In her civilian identity, she works as a laser physicist. As a superheroine, she is able to control the electromagnetic spectrum with her laser beams. I love her rainbow-colored hair and costume, mostly because I like really colorful-looking characters. Spectrina reminds me of the Rainbow Bright characters from the 80s. Vendetta, real name Veronica Benedetti. Born into the Mafia, the good in her prevailed and she became a law student. Now she has heightened combat skills, making her, perhaps, the best fighter of anyone in Heroineburgh. She has a good look in her red and black costume with the V on the left side of her chest. The way she's written, Vendetta has a leader personality. I like this character because, to me, it seems that she's the most confident one in Heroineburgh without having an ego. Ex Machina, real name Kimberly Chang. This character has a whole lot of story potential. She's a mechanical engineer with the power of magnetic waves, but even more impressive is her ability to build and fix machines with almost lightning speed. Her black and yellow costume isn't one of the most interesting in the Heroineburgh lineup, but what the character is and what she can do more than makes up for it. Her comic adventures are quite interesting to follow. In the first issue, she builds a giant robot that she uses to fight a giant-sized lizard. In the third issue, she is kidnapped by the Black Faction and manipulated into becoming the villainous Ultra Machina. Characters worth mentioning. Villainesses. Clarina, real name Claire Morena. This sexy evil genius is a rogue biologist with the powers of toxic gases and mind control. If she ever got her way, the world would be a scary place. Fortunately, she's not the strongest enemy, and her powers aren't as effective as many of the other characters in the series. Still, Clarina's intelligence makes her a threat that can't be ignored. Devora, real name Deborah Dronestein. You gotta love those bug girls in the comics. I don't even like bugs, but something about girls in insect-themed costumes is awesome. Bees, butterflies, ladybugs, wasps, whatever it is, they almost always work. Just as long as they still look like girls. Devora is a bee girl, the queen bee as it were. Like many bad girls, she's a control fanatic. She has super strength, the power of flight, a stinger blast, and the ability to turn anyone into her drones. Devora's poor, unfortunate victims instantly have bee masks over their faces and are under her total control. The good thing is that this transformation can be reversed. Fennica, real name Penelope Fuse. She and her husband Dwight were always thieves. Now that she has the superpowers of strength, speed, claws, and agility, they're worse than ever. Fennica, in my opinion, is one of the all-time sexiest characters in Heroineburgh. I've always liked those bad girl master thief characters like Black Cat and Catwoman. This character, in her skin-tight silver costume, is different than the others for the fact that she is married and not seeking romance. She's just a thief, but an exceptionally powerful thief. I think this character has a lot of potential. She's a good-looking character, and I believe it would be interesting if a major story arc reformed her into becoming a heroine. Mesmera, real name Missy Thrall, is a criminal for hire with extreme powers of hypnotism and super strength. I love her purple bodysuit with hypnotic swirls. She's a very nasty personality with no redeeming qualities. If she used her powers for good, she could be quite a superheroine. As it stands, she makes quite a threatening villainess. Queenpin, real name Olivia Queen. This is a definite nod to Kingpin from Marvel Comics. Like that character, she's a big boss that hides all her illegal activities behind a legitimate business. She's an oil baroness who desires nothing less than total power and the destruction of the superheroines. Queenpin is fat, mean, and terrible, just like her male counterpart from that other comics company. She's like a female version of Boss Hogg from the Dukes of Hazzard with a flashier wardrobe. In issue number 2, she sends an army of flying, laser-shooting robots after the heroines. The robots were easily defeated due to solid teamwork, but just the same, they're threatening menaces. Vaporia, real name Victoria Vaughn. This is an interesting character just in the way she's conceived. I don't think she's the sexiest character in Heroineburgh, but she certainly has a lot going on. Vaporia is the leader of the Black Faction. Her husband is the corrupt police sergeant Mark Drake, and together they plot to destroy all the do-gooders. She's a vape shop owner and has powers of smoke and vapor, able to put people to sleep or kill them. In that way, her powers are similar to Clarina. Unlike some of the villainesses, she has a rather ordinary background. Being a vape shop owner is not like being a scientist, billionaire, or master thief. She is probably the most determined, however, and certainly wicked enough to get ahead as a crime boss. The heroines and villainesses I've mentioned are just some of the many characters you'll find between the video and comic book series. I like them all, but these are standouts for me. There is such a large cast, though, that everyone is going to have their favorites. Your list may be different than mine, so I urge you to check it out. How to visit Heroineburgh. Do you want Heroineburgh's awesome comics or videos? Do you want to keep up on its local news? There are many ways you can visit Heroineburgh, and you can go there anytime you like. Check out its website at www.heroineburgh.com. The Mighty City also has a Facebook page at facebook.com/Heroineburgh. On Twitter, it can be located at twitter.com/Heroineburgh1. It also has a page at deviantart.com/Heroineburgh. Check out the Heroineburgh channel on YouTube. Last but not least, it has a superpowered presence at Instagram.com/Heroineburgh412. The fun continues. Independent comic book publishers, historically, have put out a lot of great, interesting comics. I can respect any comic that wants to go against the grain and do something special. Heroineburgh certainly earned its place in the comic kingdom.